Coogs House. It's time to talk about the greatest athlete to ever put on a Houston Cougar uniform.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation, but I want to say, tell us in the comments down below what the last book you read was. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Lowest prices on tickets guaranteed. More on that fun later, but I'm tripping over my words because I'm so excited about this series we're starting today. Now, as a bonus set of content, each and every Monday for the next several weeks, we're going to be doing a book club with Mirin Fader. Mirin Fader is a writer for The Ringer, also a New York Times bestseller for her biography on Giannis, actually pretty well timed up around the time he's winning the NBA title. She has a book coming out tomorrow, Tuesday, October 15th, called Dream, the life and legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon, the best athlete, in my opinion, to ever put on a Houston Cougar uniform. Mirin's a fantastic writer, does a great job of covering all kinds of athletes and stories on and off the field and court, all over a spectrum of both basketball and football. And she actually been working on this for a long time. We've sat down for a series of conversations that took a long time after I got to read the book ahead of time to get to talk to you about it. And it's going to be broken down like a book club. So like this first episode is going to be kind of introing to the book and maybe a little bit on the prologue, but we're going to let you get the book either via pre-order in the link in the show notes. Go to your local bookstore starting as early as Tuesday. You can go to Brazos bookstore on Thursday and get to see meet Mirin in person. I think she's signing copies and stuff there as well. All kinds of fun stuff surrounding Dream, the book. Really excited for this. The book is beautifully written, and it really does a great job of detailing all of Hakeem Olajuwon's stories, including stuff you thought you knew but you had wrong, and stuff you'd heard but wanted to relive once again. The book's a very, very well done piece of, I want to say, artwork almost. It's really, really beautifully written, and it also talks again about Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, what else could you want? This is, again, a bonus series we're doing every Monday, and we're going to kind of tell you where to catch up and how to keep up to date with the book club. So like today, intro to the book, prologue, getting ready for the story. Next week, we'll do a couple chapters and so on. So we're going to divide it up for you to follow along with us, that you kind of read along with us as well. Mirin is excited to talk about the book. She's putting a lot of work into this as well. So I'm excited to get to bring her on. Without further ado, let's bring on Mirin Fader. Joined today by Mirin Fader, author of Dream, the life and legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon, Houston's very own, although I would argue the book, I guess, does lay out how he's actually got a lot of ties to a lot of other places beforehand. Mirin, you took a lot of trips in this book to Houston, a lot of back and forth all over the place to learn about this book. I want to ask you a lot about it. But first, how are you doing? And then ahead of a very quick trip to Houston soon, can you tell us something that you learned about the city outside of number 34?
Hi, Parker. Good to see you. Yes, I know. I love Houston. I guess I just learned how passionate Houston fans are. I guess you know that from afar, and you know like the drought of championships before the Rockets won theirs. But when you're like actually talking to people from Houston, like the passion, it like bleeds out. You like you feel it visceral. You feel the frustration. You feel the hope. You feel the sadness. You feel this like they don't respect us vibe. They don't think we can do that. Like I don't know. Coming from somebody who wrote about Milwaukee, it's very similar. I really did respect that.
You mentioned Milwaukee. For the folks at home that maybe name's familiar, New York Times bestseller for her work on Giannis, and I want to, in a second, kind of get to the connection there as well between these two. But for the Locked On Cougs listener, did you see anything did you spend any time at the University of Houston? It's a very particular part of town. It's a little bit different than the rest of it.
Right.
What did you notice as you scoured that area of town for information for this one?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there. I thought it was really important to talk about like the history of that part of town and Third Ward and that culture, because it's important to know that Hakeem doesn't just come to America and come to any place. He comes to a place that was very deeply segregated. This university has a history of, Guy Lewis, the coach, being among the first to integrate his team. And so I just spent like hours in the library at the university just trying to research this aspect and trying to go to Fondy Rec Center, where him and Moses Malone worked out, and going to the old JCC where, it was really the only place that allowed integrated pickup games. So I needed to spend time in this part of the city to really understand the environment that Hakeem was coming from. But the thing about Houston is like people are really nice, like really friendly. Everyone was like, "Do you want to sit and talk about this? Oh, we could talk about Phi Slamma Jamma all day." Like people just were really kind and like wanting to go down memory lane with me, which was really fun.
Well, it probably helps when memory lane's what you got in a lot of ways. The basketball program is pretty strong right now. I shouldn't
Oh my God.
too much. All right, I gotta ask before we get into the nitty gritty on the book. It is very well written, so go pick up your copy. We'll link that kind of stuff in the show notes. But Mirin, you're a Southern California girl.
That's
You are SoCal through and through. And in a way that I love that about you. I don't mean that in a bad way.
None offense taken.
But you jump into your publisher Hatchet with the Hakeem pitch. Yeah. What is the pitch and what do they respond with you? Because I can't connect you and Hakeem at all before the book. That's odd.
I know. It is, but then it's not, because the first book on Giannis, it very much to me felt like two books in one. So it wasn't just Giannis's biography, but it was really about the current landscape of international players dominating, and how specifically African players dominated. And so when I was looking for my second book, I was really thinking about that first book and thinking about, well, who set the table for the Giannis's of the world, the Joel Embiids of the world? Like, who made this current landscape possible? Who inspired it? And I thought of Hakeem. And it's very hard to pitch a book, kind of like what you're alluding to, on a player that dominated in, the 90s, whose story really spanned 79 to in the 80s. You have to root a book that is nostalgic like that in the present. And so once I had the hook of like everything you see now in modern NBA basketball, from the way it's played, the flow, the positionless basketball, to the influx of international players, it all stems back to Hakeem. So Hakeem was like the window into today's world. It was like the prequel to Giannis. And so once I pitched it to the, publisher that way, that made sense. Like, okay, we have to ground this in the present somehow.
Now, I want to take a pause in the action, talk about when you're hiring for your small business and you want to find quality professionals that are right for that role, like finding Hakeem Olajuwon for your team. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs are the tools you need to help find the right professional for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidate in 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. At linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So the present's interesting and I want to talk about the prologue and the opening with like what feels very present, although I guess it was a decade old. I'm going to read like a passage here.
Is a common theme of this interview. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I want to read a passage, and it's from the notes. And if I'm being honest, you probably have to be more nerdish like myself to get into the notes in the back. But it says in the back of the book, it says, this book is about transformation, athletically, spiritually, globally. I made several trips to Houston in my reporting, including visiting the downtown Islamic Dawah Center, the mosque that Olajuwon founded and restored in the mid-90s. Amir Abdulmani, the director of the center and longtime friend of Olajuwon's, kindly welcomed me to spend time at the mosque and helped me gain and appreciate Olajuwon's deeply rooted impact on Muslim communities, both in Houston and around the world. Before I left the mosque, Abdulmani gave me a book about Islam to further my study, as well as a beautiful magenta prayer rug interwoven with silver thread. When a Muslim gives you a prayer rug, he told me, it is from the heart. Olajuwon is Houston. You can find him at the local mosque or the local AAU tournaments, cheering in the stands as if he were an ordinary person. Hoopers at the Fonda Rec Center, the spot Olajuwon first honed his game against Moses Malone, share stories of how Olajuwon, to this day, will leave signed sneakers on the bleachers for anyone to pick up. You go on to talk about like the connection he has with the city at a lot of different points. Mm-hmm. When did it click that the city itself was going to be a central figure in the book? Like Houston as a city is unique. I would assume a lot of listeners to this know that, but the city of Houston plays a key role here too.
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. I appreciate you picking up on that, because it is. And it's not that it's no accident that he came to Houston, because again, we know it very much was on a lark that he gets to Houston, but the city itself, first of all, there's a huge Nigerian population that immigrated even before he did. The city of Houston is just a very special place, and it is very rare for somebody to be drafted and then get to play in the pros, stick with that city, go through growing pains with that city, have horrible dark years with that city, glow up with that city. Like, everyone sort of saw him from the beginning. There is this sense of him being Houston's own. There is this sense of him being like, it was like the evolution of Hakeem, and everyone got to see it and grow up with him.
A buddy of mine asked me one time who was more Houston between Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, kind of assuming Drexler from nearby Dickinson would be considered more Houston. And I almost instantaneously responded it was Hakeem, not because kind of Drexler went away for a second, and it doesn't feel like Hakeem's ever been away once he got there. I know that that's probably not what every person would say. That's very much my take on it. Hakeem was also better. I was born in 91, so I like missed some of the Phi Slamma Jam as far as live and in person, right? But he is so closely tied to this, and he changes a lot. The first part of what I read there, you mentioned the transformation. I don't mean to put you in too vulnerable a spot. The book, I'm sure, took a lot of transformations and twists and turns. Is there a moment where those kinds of twists and turns really like took a sharp turn?
I definitely, well, I'll say this. The broad strokes of his career are known, but there was nothing really out there on like, why did he have these dark years? What caused him to go back to Islam? Why did he abandon Islam in the first place? There was just so many unanswered questions. His upbringing, not much was known other than some guy discovered him at 17 and then he's on his way to America. So rather than sharp turns, it was just like this giant expansive field, right? And like nothing is known. His former, Nigerian coaches and teammates have never been interviewed. So I think this book is really the first. So for me, the turn though was probably the origin story and finding out the myth of him coming to Houston and, the busting the myth of him allegedly going to St. John's. That is when things took a turn of like, okay, I get it. That the mythology of Dream, the stories that have been passed through the years, it is like telephone. This book is kind of going to be a revelation for a lot of people. It's going to, bust those myths, but also kind of what we've been talking about age. If you're under 30, you pretty much don't know anything about Olajuwon unless you are from Houston, unless you understand that. One thing I did just think of and remember, I jump around. One of the places that I went to in my Houston trip, well, on the many Houston trips, Henry E. Rondo, who's like a central figure in the book, he is like a father figure to Olajuwon. His son took me to Blood Brothers. And I don't know if you've been there in Houston. Or if they call it, if I'm uncool, is it blood bros? I don't know, but unclear. I know I am uncool, but anyway, it was great. It was so good. It's supposed to be like some of the best barbecue. It was so good. I'm bringing up this anecdote because I'm getting like our waters and he's getting the food, and I see that they have sauce, and it's literally, I'll show you a picture after. I'll put it on my Twitter. It's the circular sauce, and it's painted red like the jersey, and it's a jersey of 34, and it's literally like Hakeem sauce without being branded by Hakeem or anything like that. It's just pure respect that in the year 2024 at this barbecue place, the sauce is going to have a Hakeem Houston jersey on it. Really, that was when I was like, that line came to me like, oh, he is Houston, like to this day.
Right. To this day, forever. It just like 34, and there'd be people that point out 34 is a big number in football with Earl Campbell, and a big number in baseball with Nolan Ryan, but like, it really does stick out in red and white because he both went to the university and played for the Rockets, right? I think it's an everlasting thing. I want to dive into the book a little bit as we'll go back to the start. I shouldn't start at the end with the notes, but I thought that was a poignant moment. You open the book in the prologue talking about LeBron James. And I don't I want to say LeBron James might even be the first two words. And it's it's looking back at after LeBron's arguably biggest failure, right? They get to the finals, the Miami Heat super team, and fall apart. And like the consensus, and I actually remember this as we were both in college, actually. I remember this as a college student. The consensus amongst all fans across the NBA was LeBron's got to go work with Hakeem Olajuwon. I thought you did a great job of hitting that point that like it was widely considered like he needs to go work on this post game with Hakeem. Why hadn't he gotten this figured out yet? Right. And part of that's because of some of the way that final series unfolded. The scene you lay out, though, is like this legendary working out with Hakeem in this backwoods gym and all of this, like, very, like, a guy working on his craft in the woods, separated from society, kind of off the grid. First of all, that gym really exists.
No, it's a barn. It is real.
Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to get last-minute tickets and the lowest prices guaranteed. I love all the different features they got, like all-in pricing. You can see what your vantage point will look like in that section and row in that venue for that type of event. So whether it's a comedy show, the theater, a concert, or a sports game, whatever you're looking for, Game Time has the tickets. They have all-in pricing, so you're getting the best deal. And the lowest price guarantee means Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You find the same section and row for cheaper somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download Game Time, the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Turn to play. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. First of all, that gym really exists.
No, it's a barn. It is real. There is a hoop leading up to it. Yes.
And which is the myth is real. The myth is real.
That myth is real.
You said earlier that you wanted to get this rooted in the present. I know that was a little over a decade ago at this point, but LeBron James is, spoiler, still playing basketball. He just dominated the Olympics. It feels very present. Was it intentional to go to the, arguably current best player in the NBA to open the book and kind of show that? What was the thought in opening with this LeBron scene as opposed to an Hakeem scene?
Yeah, I really battled with this because I actually wanted to open the book with the scene after he wins his first NBA championship, and instead of going to celebrate, he goes to the mosque. And I talked with somebody who was there that night, and when I heard that anecdote, it was so powerful. Like, I got chills, I felt emotional, and I was so sure that was going to be the lead of the book. But then I remembered kind of what we were talking about earlier about books and public and how the industry works, and how, you've got to make it present somehow, even though it's like deeply nostalgic, it's in the past. And didn't realize how old we were until you said a decade ago. Yeah. Wrong thing to me seemed present. And so I just thought I've got to make that the lead. There's a quote that I got when talking to Kenny Smith about how when all these players come to you, that means you're the best. And I knew that to me is like the pull quote as somebody that used to work at a newspaper. I was like, okay, boom, that's got to go there. So I knew I had to ground it in the present. But basically, because I want to make it clear to the reader that like Hakeem's legacy, right? Biographies are about legacy, is helping other people. A lot of people, when they retire, they don't want to share their secrets. They don't want other people to be better than them. They don't want younger players to, rise on the blocks list and the rebounds list and surpass them. Hakeem is like the most generous, giving. I want to show you everything that I know. And so I knew like the beginning of the book had to start with mentorship.
And it's interesting because so there would be an argument to be said that LeBron James, again, who's a central figure in the prologue, is a pioneer in a bunch of different ways. The media, the controlling his destiny, the way that they formed all these different super teams, the whatever, right? Olajuwon, you directly call a pioneer at one point there, right? And they're very kind of different in their own ways, but all are both pioneering kind of folks. Do you see that mentorship that you open with as like the most clear cut like buzzword to tie to Hakeem and his legacy? Is it, I mean, even more so than dominance? Like, what would you, is that what you would go with?
That is what I would go with, because as dominant as he was, as much as he still, is so up there in all the different records, and, we can argue about who's greatest of all time, whatever. The fact that whenever I call anyone about Hakeem, and it's well over 250 people for this book, everybody has an anecdote of a random act of kindness that he did for them. And everyone has a story of like, here's how Hakeem helped me. Here's how Hakeem made me better. I interview a lot of NBA players. I cover football. There's a really stark difference between talking to people about how good somebody is and talking to people about how they made someone better. And I just think that is such a more meaningful legacy. And it's so clear and rare to have somebody be so unanimously, like the word I think of when I think of Olajuwon is beloved. Like it's respected for sure, but it's beloved. And so I think he will be remembered not just for the dominance, but for giving. And as you see in this book too, like that wasn't a lesson that he just had within him. That was taught to him by Moses Malone. That was taught to him by all these other, Rockets greats and people before him. And so I truly think that like that's such a central lesson that he wanted to give on to the next generation, whether it's LeBron, whether it's Kobe, whether most recently Giannis in 2023. It sort of comes full circle.
Comes full circle. Thank you again to Mirin for stopping by again. Mirin and I talked for a long time about her book, Dream, The Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. Talked through each and every chapter. We sat down over a course of a couple conversations, and I really, really think you're going to enjoy reading along and following along. So, for the sake of this episode, we hope that that's enough to make you want to go get the book either in the show notes. The pre-order can get it to your house in the next couple of days. It does come out on Tuesday, October 15th. You can go to your local bookstore at that point. You can go down on Thursday to Brazos Bookstore, find Mirin in person. She's signing and doing a bunch of talks about it there as well. It's an exciting time to be cheering on the Cougs and basketball, obviously, but also to be remembering one of the greatest basketball players, and again, in my opinion, the best Houston Cougar of all time, in Hakeem Olajuwon. So go check that out. Next episode, we're going to be breaking down the first 3 chapters, right? So 3 chapters. So when you get the book this week, you're going to want to read the first 3 chapters to be ready for the conversation on Monday. Again, this is a supplemental series. We're doing this once a week, talking with Mirin about the book. There'll be another episode, a full-length episode, a more traditional episode come out later today. So if you're, need your fix, whatever, talking about Houston Cougar preseason basketball and stuff like that, check in on that episode as well. Thank you again for tuning in, subscribing. Thank you for purchasing Mirin's book and following along as we follow this book club. I read an article in The Atlantic last week about like how few people at prestigious colleges could even finish a book these days. And I got really down. And so help me get back up and not down so much about this, and help by reading this book, following along, and getting back into the Phi Slamma Jamma spirit. Locked on Cougs, the primary to Locked On podcast now, which means your team every single day, sometimes twice a day like today, would do book club stuff. Go Cougs.